I'm running to lead the Ontario Liberal Party, to put the Ontario deal back on the table.
This is the guy that wants to lead Ontario. Navdeep Bains, Liberal Dodge Cam number 2.
And management and how the programs are administered.
And no, not the profit. Leah Lawrence testified here, the former president of the Liberal Green Slush Fund testified here before committee that around May of 2019, when you were a minister, you called her to tell her that you were going to replace the chair at that time, Jim Basili, with the new chair, and you gave her 2 names that you wanted her to review. Is that correct?
I don't recall a specific conversation, but I would say it's not uncommon for me to reach out to CEOs to engage them in the board selection process. Well,
you suggested to her 2 names, one Annette Fischerin, another individual who declined to participate because they had a pending conflict. Are you aware of that the 2 names that you provided both had a conflict?
Again, just to highlight that during my tenure, there was over 100.
I asked you about the 100, Minister. I asked you about this one. I'm preparing for this committee. I assume you looked at your notes.
I'm saying I don't recall the specific conversation you're alluding to.
That's convenient.
But the point I'm making is there's over 100 GIC appointments.
I know there are. That's convenient. I have limited time, as you know, so I'm not going to have a list of your 100 appointments. On this one that has been in the news for a year, I would have thought that you would have looked at your notes from your time in office. So I will take the testimony from the president as fact then, since you can't contradict that. So you then proceeded to appoint a number of other directors who were also conflicted, but both you and your chief of staff said that this process started in 2018. Is it normal when you start a process to replace a chair that you don't inform that chair that that process is ongoing?
The process, as I've highlighted in my remarks, is an open and fair and transparent process that's publicly available to all individuals. So anyone that wants to apply can do so. As I also mentioned,
asking about the application process, former minister, I wish you would answer the question instead of sticking to vague generalities. The issue here is that you asked them to consider 2 people that are conflicted against the Conflict of Interest Act and public office holder requirements. That then proceeded to be checked out. That the president reported back to ADM Noseworthy, former ADM Noseworthy, that one of them dropped out and that the other was conflicted and shouldn't be appointed. Now, I'm presuming that ADM Noseworthy put that up the food chain, and the word came back 3 weeks later, according to the president, that that's who you wanted appointed, even though she had a conflict. Why did you think it was appropriate to appoint somebody to this board who had a conflict?
So there's 2 aspects to your question. The first is the process is very clear in terms of determining how individuals are selected. This is an open, public, fair, merit-based, transparent process.
That's not my question. With respect, that's not my question.
As I mentioned, secondly, all designated public office holders are subject to the Conflict of Interest Act.
I already stated that. Why aren't you answering the question? Why are you obfuscating about a conflicted director who ended up running a corrupt board that resulted in over $76 million of taxpayer money being taken from the taxpayers and voted to their own companies?
As I've said, there's a very clear process in terms of selecting the individual. It was a very open and fair and transparent process.
It's fair if you're a Liberal. You recommended her to the Governor and Council. I would ask you, were you aware that Andre Lise-Matteau, who you also put on the board, voted for $42 million to her companies? Were you aware that former Liberal staffer and Trudeau organizer Steve Kukucher, you put on the board in this fair and open process, who voted his companies more than $25 million of taxpayer money? Are you aware that you appointed Guy Ouimet from Quebec, who voted for $4 million in this fair and open process for his own companies. This is your legacy as Minister of Industry, that you set up a $1 billion slush fund for the Liberal Party that people could feather bed their own investments and break the law by furthering the value of their investments in companies using taxpayer dollars. Is that what you intended to do?
As I indicated in my opening remarks, I left cabinet on January the 12th of 2021, so I'm not sure which appointments were before or after that. I would also indicate again the
Boy, it's great to have amnesia, isn't it?
Mr. Perkins, your time's out. Please let the...
I just again want to reiterate that all designated public office holders have an obligation to hold themselves to a certain standard. And with respect to Ms. Verschoorn, her credentials were well known. She received the Order of Canada. She's an individual that was well respected in the clean tech sector. And I understand correctly, she served under Mr. Flaherty as part of his Economic Advisory Committee in 2008, and was also appointed to stick under Mr. Harper as well. So again, she's an individual that worked for previous governments and again was well known within the business community, particularly in the clean tech sector.
Thank you.
To Mr. Bains, it's good to see you. It's been a long time. I do want to go towards this issue with yourself, and can you explain during the process, was there any direction that you received or directive with regards to workers' rights, selecting board members that had experience dealing with the issues of ethics and so forth? There seems to be a series of issues here. Was there any direction given to that process? Obviously, we cannot undo a lot of the things that have taken place now, but if you have any recommendations or remorse with regards to the board selection that led to the abuse of employees. And lastly, these employees at least will be part of a group at NRC now, but they didn't have that protection. Is there any recommendations that you would have that would do differently to protect workers that are susceptible to political appointments?
Thank you very much for your question, and great to see you virtually. I think the last time I was in committee was in 2020, so that was the last time we had an interaction on the committee here at INDU. You raise a good point, and I would say with respects to the process, it was open to everyone, Mr. Massey. This was listed on the website, so any individual that wanted to apply for this role could do so, and I'm hoping that people take this opportunity to recognize these are public processes that individuals are encouraged to apply. It's open to everyone, and we want people from different experiences, as you mentioned, from labor, for example, all different aspects to be included in this process. So I want to thank you for highlighting that.
Do you remember if you had any labor appointees in that process?
I don't recall who put up their hand and how many people applied, but I do know that it was available and open to everyone and that it was a public process. All appointments are actually listed on the GIC website.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Bains, yesterday the Auditor General released a damning report that ripped SDTC, or the Liberal Green Slush Fund, to shreds. $120 million in taxpayers' dollars that went out the door improperly, 186 cases of conflicts of interest, $76 million that was funneled by board members that you appointed to companies that they had interests in. And so in the face of that damning report, do you stand by the appointments that you made to the SDTC board?
I think the process, Mr. Chair, through you to the parliamentarian, was open, fair, and transparent. It included the Privy Council office as well.
I asked you, Mr. Bains, do you stand by those appointments, yes or no?
I stand by the process by which the selections were made. It was an open, fair, transparent, merit-based process.
Mr. Bains, you appointed board members who then rigged the system to funnel money, $76 million, to pad their own pockets instead of investing SDTC funds in legitimate investments. In the face of the damning Auditor General's report, is it am I to take it you have no regrets, no remorse, you accept no responsibility?
No, what I am saying is that the process that occurred in selecting the individuals for Sustainable Development Technology Canada has been followed by all the appointments that I've made under the Governor and Council. And that means it's an open process.
In other words, you take no responsibility. That's what I take from your answer. And so now that you've made it clear that you have no regrets, that you don't take any responsibility, that speaks to, frankly, the rot and corruption of this government, I want to ask you a little bit about the decisions around appointments to the SDTC board. Did you make those decisions on your own? Yeah, I understand there's a process, but at the end of the day, did you make the final call?
You're correct. There is a process that...
I asked you, did you make the final call, yes or no? Yes or no?
And so, as I was saying, there's a process. And
interested in the process. I'm familiar with the process, but I asked, did you make the final decision? Did you have the final say, yes or no? Or are you passing responsibility to someone else, perhaps the Prime Minister's office? So which is it, Mr. Bains?
So as I was saying, there's a process, and through that process, a recommendation is made, and that process
this is just ridiculous. You're deliberately obfuscating a very simple question that I asked that goes to your responsibility as Minister for appointing all of these corrupt directors to the SDTC board, and that is, did you have the final say, or did someone else have the final say, perhaps someone in the PMO?
So the way this unfolds is that the Privy Council office is engaged in this selection process. They make a recommendation, and based on that recommendation, we take the appropriate steps.
Did you communicate with the PMO with respect to these appointments?
The Privy Council office is involved in this process, along with a number of other government departments, and they.
Why does the PMO have an appointment secretariat? So I presume you were communicating with someone in the PMO. Who were you communicating with?
Again, this is a public process. People can
ask, who were you communicating
with? It's open to everyone. And so it's a committee, a panel that looks at the number of individuals that put their name forward. They go through an interview process. Their CV is examined.
Does the PMO have any say, yes or no? Would you just answer one question? Did the PMO have any say, yes or no?
So again, sorry, I'm trying my best to answer. I keep on getting interrupted. What I was saying is that in
being interrupted, Mr. Bains, because you're not answering basic questions. You're trying to avoid accountability.
Mr. Cooper, that's all the time you had, and I'll give a few seconds to Mr. Bains to answer the questions that were asked.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that it was a robust process in terms of determining who is selected. I made over 100 recommendations.
What a joke of an answer. It's ridiculous.
Colleagues, okay, that's sorry, Mr. Bains, to interrupt, but please, we at this committee, Mr. Cooper, we stay respectful.
The water at that ISED office where everybody has amnesia. Mr. Noseworthy has amnesia. Mr. Bains has amnesia. You have amnesia. Ms. Bueller has amnesia, who she talked to. If I wouldn't swear, you all work together in the Liberal Party and are covering up for something. Now, Mr. Bains, are you telling me that nobody in your staff told you, after all of what has been testified before this committee, told you about the conflict and you went ahead anyway?
So thank you very much.
Don't give me an appointments process lecture again.
Mr.
Thank you very much.
Just let the witness answer, and that's all the time you have, Mr. Bains.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. As I've indicated before, this appointment was made 5 years ago, I believe, approximately 5 years ago. This is one of a number of appointments that I made as a minister, and I had full confidence in.
You have no responsibility for anything that happened when you were minister.
Mr. Perkins, I'll now turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bains, I'll try again in respect to the question that you didn't answer of Mr. Perkins, and that is, were you aware of Ms. Verscheren's conflict, namely that her company was receiving money from the Green Slush Fund when you appointed her as chair of the board? Yes or no?
Thank you very much for the question. As I indicated before, and I believe Mr. Noseworthy has said so as well, Ms. Verscheren's business experience in the clean tech sector.
So seeing you're not answering that question, it was a yes or no question. Seeing that, once again, you're not answering questions, I'll move on to a different question. I think the answer is yes to that question, but you just won't admit it because you don't take responsibility. So,
point of order.
Mr. Turnbull, yes.
I don't know whether it's acceptable for Mr. Cooper to both talk over the witness and then answer for them, but I don't think that that's what Mr. Bains said. So I would just say, maybe Mr. Cooper could just allow the witness to respond to his questions. I know that he's framing them as yes or no questions, but perhaps the witness doesn't see it as a yes or no question. So
thank you, Mr. Turnbull, but I give a bit of leeway, especially given we've got an experienced politician as well, Mr. Bains. So I give a bit of leeway, but the general rule is we try to give witnesses as much time for their answers as for the questions. So, Mr. Cooper, please keep that in mind. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will ask the minister another yes or no question of the former minister, a yes or no question. Mr. Bains, have you read the Auditor General's report? Yes or no?
Again, thank you very much for the question. I have not had the opportunity to read the report in its entirety.
Well, I find that incredible, seeing that you're here to answer questions about the corrupt mess that you oversaw as minister at SDTC, the Liberal Green Slush Fund. If you had read the damning Auditor General's report, you would have learned that when Ms. Verscheren was appointed chair, she changed the conflict of interest policy of the Green Slush Fund with respect to the blackout period so that board members could buy shares in companies that they approved monies to within 3 days. Were you aware of that change in the conflict of interest policy by Ms. Verscheren?
Thank you very much for the question. I would say that all designated public office holders understand the rules that they need to follow in terms of the Conflict of Interest Act, and those rules pertain to people who sat on the SDTC board as well.
Well, clearly not, given that there were 188 cases of conflicts of interest involving members of the board and others at the Green Slush Fund. But I ask you again, were you aware of that change in the conflict of interest policy so that board members at the Green Slush Fund could approve funds to certain companies on Monday and buy shares by the end of the week?
This is an arm's length organization that has a mandate from the Act of Parliament, I believe, as I recall in my opening remarks, which was established in 2001 for this organization.
Minister,
and it's very clear
Mr. Bains, Mr. Bains, you're an executive at Rogers. Would that fly? Because you know what it sounds like to me? And it doesn't just sound like it to me. I'll call it what it is. It's called insider trading. Does insider trading fly at Rogers?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm delighted to be here today before the committee to answer any questions with respects to Sustainable Development Technology Canada.
I asked you a simple question, and that is, do you think it's acceptable that a conflict of interest policy at the Green Slush Fund that happened under your watch as minister was changed such that board members could vote to funnel taxpayers' money into companies and before week's end buy shares in those companies? Do you think that that is acceptable? Because I will repeat again, I call that, and it is, insider trading.
I believe it's important that all designated public office holders hold themselves to the highest possible standard and follow the rules that are clearly outlined in the Conflict of Interest Act. And that is an expectation that all public office holders should abide by.
Well, Mr. Bains, do you believe that your only role as minister was to appoint members to the board? Is that the only role that you saw with respect to the SDTC and the Green Slush Fund?
So thank you for the question. It is an arm's length organization. The board and management has clear rules of how they should conduct themselves.
Mr. Bains, had you bothered to read the Auditor General's report, you would have discovered that the Auditor General found that your department under your watch completely failed to see that contribution agreements were complied with, and completely failed with respect to overseeing conflicts of interest. 188 cases. Taken together, $120 million went out the door. So do you take issue with the Auditor General's findings, damning findings about failings of your department under your watch as minister?
Thank you very much again for that very important question. And I would say I respect the work of the Auditor General, and I think it's very clear what she stated in that report.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bains. I'll now turn over.
Mr. Perkins, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Incredible, Mr. Noseworthy sat in the committee. The Auditor General pointed out he was there 96 times when they declared a conflict of interest, and they were feeding each other, 5 directors, money. So my question is actually for Mr. Bains. In 2016, you appointed Andre Lise-Mateau to the board, perhaps the most corrupt of all your corrupt appointments. Andre Lise-Mateau had already received, she has a company called Cycle Capital, a venture capital company. She had already, her companies that she has ownership in, had already received $101 million from the Green Slush Fund before you appointed her to the board in breach of the Conflict of Interest Act. Then once on the board, she voted herself $42.5 million into those companies. And then within the year, in the cooling off period where she was supposed to have no contact with them, she got another $8.5 million, $150 million to this one corrupt director that you reported. Are you aware of any of that? Or like everything else, you are doing a Hogan's Hero Sergeant Schultz routine?
Again, thank you very much for the question. During my tenure, I recall making over 100 GIC appointments. There were a number of people that were appointed. I've talked about the process.
And in your opening, you said you were responsible for the appointments, yet you take no responsibility for any of them. Were you aware that Stephen Guilbeault was the lobbyist for Cycle Capital? And in his time as the lobbyist, Cycle Capital received $111 million of grants from SDTC. And in fact, in 2018 and 2019, he met 25 times with industry, your office, and the PMO. Did you ever meet with Stephen Guilbeault before he was elected on these projects? Let me guess, you don't recall.
Well, if anyone did meet with me, there's clear rules and obligations around reporting.
Did you meet with him, yes or no? I would think 25 times of a current environment minister and a nominated candidate in the Liberal Party was in your office, you would recall those meetings.
To the best of my recollection, I don't recall any such meetings. And I would say that, again, this is an arm's length organization that has a clear mandate of how it conducts itself.
Isn't it convenient that in an arm's length organization, it's Liberals who get appointed to the board through your neutral process? By the way, I'm not sure what PMO appointments does with the many, many people that work in Trudeau's PMO appointments that clear all these things and say to you, we're appointing these Liberals, even though they're corrupt and voted themselves got $100 million. And your current Minister of Environment and this Liberal government lobbied 25 times for the most corrupt of them all, and you say, I don't remember. How many times has it been? 42 times since you've been before this committee that you've said in 2 hours you don't remember. Why would Rogers hire you if you can't remember anything about what you did here. You seem like the most ineffective person. If you can't remember your time as a minister and these meetings, it's not about the 100 appointments. When Liberal candidates are in your office lobbying on behalf of Liberal appointments that you made to get $150 million of taxpayer money funneled into their companies to personally benefit from it, this type of Liberal corruption, I guess, is accepted in the Liberal Party. Heck, why would I expect any different from you? You were the guy in charge of reducing cell phone rates and then left office and went to work for the biggest, most expensive cell phone company in the world. You are feather bedding your own corrupt approach to your career, and why would we expect that you would point anyone else that was any different?
Thank you very much for the question. As I've said before, Ms. Verschern and her credentials are well known. She served under Jim Flaherty as an advisor during the financial crisis. She was also appointed, I believe, to the Science, Technology, Innovation Council by Mr. Harper.
I know her resume. We know it well. You can look it up on LinkedIn. I don't need your recitation and defense of her resume. I want your explanation of why you put Andre Lise-Moutot, who had $100 million already from this fund, taxpayer money, on the board so she could steal another $50 million of taxpayer money. Why did you do it?
Okay, and now, Mr. Perkins, that's all the time you had. Please let the witness answer. Mr. Bains, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Individuals that are identified and selected are done through in a very public way. They have to go to the website. They have to download their CV. There's a panel that's established that includes the PCO. These individuals, again, go through that process. Recommendations are made to me. And this was the process that was followed for all the GIC appointments that I made.
Thank you, Mr.